Hey, hey, hey! Welcome to my cozy corner of the internet. This is Nephilim VA bringing you the 19th chapter of Inheritance, written by A is for Amy 71 on AO3. Izuku never gets a break. The time after his exam just ended up with more evil people coming out of the woodworks. Will starting school make it any better? Let's find out, but first, the trigger warnings. This fanfiction is for mature audiences with canon-typical violence and a trigger warning for major character death. If that isn't your style, then I recommend Shades of Green, which is written by Maybe It's Friendly on AO3. It can be found on my channel! Canon Divergence is the name of the game and indulges the what-ifs of Midoriya Izuku having a quirk. With that being said, the chapter summary is as followed. Izuku's first day at UA has arrived. Now I implore you to sit back and relax whilst I read to you. Chapter 19. Izuku was feeling completely better on the first day of school, without a sniffle or a cough to betray the fact that he'd been sick just the week before. He donned his new school uniform with pride and ate a good breakfast while he waited for his dad to be ready to go. When his dad took a seat at the table and quickly bit into his fried egg on toast, he almost spat it back out when he caught sight of his son. "Zoo, where did you learn to tie a tie?" "Nowhere. That's why it looks this way," Izuku told him with a grin. His dad sighed and shook his head. "I'll show you how to do it properly before we leave." Izuku was not good at the tie thing. He always misjudged just how much tail to leave, and it ended up being too long or too short. Finally, his dad just did it for him, so he wouldn't be late. Dropping Izuku off at school was going to make Izuku just a little early for class, so his dad wouldn't be late for the office. Izuku hopped out of the car at the curb quickly so they wouldn't hold up traffic, but his father had been sure to snap a picture of him through the window before he drove away. "I'm proud of you," his father called as he pulled away from the curb. Izuku smiled and headed towards the huge building. He'd been sent a simple map of campus with his enrollment forms and had pored over it, trying to memorize where everything was. He already felt safer here, knowing that no one without a special badge could get past the gates without raising an alarm. Plus, anyone trying to grab a student at a hero school where all the staff and teachers were current or retired professional heroes was insane. The halls were mostly quiet as he passed rooms with absolutely enormous doors, likely for students or staff with mutation quirks that gave them extra large bodies. All Might was super tall, and Endeavor was also. Both of them had gone to UA at one time, so it was probable that it wasn't uncommon. He reached room 1A and took a deep, bracing breath before sliding the door open and stepping inside. He had expected to be the first to arrive except for maybe his teacher, but he was mistaken. In the fourth seat, sitting tall and ruler straight, was another student. Izuku nodded to him as he entered and was about to issue a friendly greeting when the boy shot to his feet and approached with a somewhat stiff but fast gait with his hand extended. "Hello, I'm Ida Tenya from Somei Academy. It's a pleasure to meet another student who values punctuality as much as I do as we embark on our most important high school career." Izuku froze like a deer in headlights, dazed by the rapid-fire speech and forward attitude of his new classmate. "It's nice to meet you, Ida," he said, shaking the other boy's hand. "I'm Midoriya Izuku." He left out the part of only being early because his transportation situation kind of made him be. Ida was tall, with perfectly groomed dark hair, rectangular wire-framed glasses, and neatly manicured nails on his hands, which seemed to have the fingers glued together. Maybe that was part of his quirk? At the mention of Izuku's name, the other boy stood up even straighter, if that was possible. You're one of the students who got in by recommendation, he said, sounding excited. How? Izuku asked. He was suspicious of anyone who knew more about him than they should. It was posted in the class entrance exam results list in the main entrance hall, Ida said immediately. You and a student named Yaoyorozu are the two students who didn't have to take the entrance exam. You must be truly exceptional to deserve such an honor. I look forward to learning what I can from you. Oh, well, thank you, Izuku said, taken aback. I'll do my best to live up to it. The door slid open again and another student filed in, looking unsure that they were in the correct place. A girl, with asymmetrically cut black hair and long earlobes that hung past the ends of her shoulder-length hair and seemed to end in some sort of point. Good morning, Izuku said with a smile when their eyes met. Good morning, Ida said at nearly the same time, only twice as loud. He went over to her and introduced himself, the same as he had with Izuku. She looked at his hand for a few seconds before shaking it and saying that her name was Jiro Kyoka. Izuku was about to introduce himself to her, but the door flew open, and a boy with extremely red, extremely spiky hair strode through with a sharp-toothed grin. Yo, he said in a friendly but loud voice. Good morning. Ida looked like he wanted to say more, but the door opened again and a blonde boy with a thick tail peeking around his back entered with a shy smile. His tail had a bushy tuft of what seemed like fur sprouting from the end, and Izuku wondered what would happen if he were to touch it. Would the fur grow or not? The door slid open again as the people who had already arrived were getting to know each other and finding their desks. The red-haired boy was named Kirishima Eijiro and seemed really nice. Izuku talked with him the longest of anyone so far, and learned that his quirk was called hardening, that turned his skin to something resembling stone. All of his new classmates seemed to be fairly nice, though a couple seemed shy. One was even completely invisible except for her uniform, and it made Izuku want to barrage her with questions about it. Should I know who you are? Izuku's blood turned to ice for a moment, at the familiar voice that had him turning his head and seeing the one person he had hoped to avoid. Ka-chan was sneering at a cute girl with rosy cheeks who was talking to him in a friendly tone. You kinda saved me from that 0-pointer at the entrance exam, she reminded him. Izuku wasn't sure what a 0-pointer was, but the fact that Ka-chan had saved anyone was something new. Tch, I didn't do that for you, he growled rudely. I just knew time was running out and thought I'd take out the one thing worth fighting in that whole place. Oh, the girl said uncertainly. Well, thanks anyway. Whatever, round face, Ka-chan said, pushing past her. It took him only a few more seconds for him to spot Izuku, who was standing beside his desk, which was right behind Ka-chan's. What the hell are you doing here, Deku? He demanded angrily, storming past everyone else as if they didn't exist. You didn't take the entrance exam. I double-checked. You're right, Izuku told him evenly. Before Ka-chan could demand more answers, Ida butted in, seeming outraged. How incredibly rude! I'll have you know that this is Midoriya Izuku, one of the 2 students brilliant enough to win recommendation seats at this illustrious institution. Anyone who hadn't been staring before probably was now. Izuku sighed inwardly. Stay out of this, Four Eyes, Ka-chan snapped, grabbing hold of the front of Izuku's jacket. I ain't buying any bullshit like that. How'd you fool them into letting you in? Everyone take your seats, said a voice from the front of the room. There, a tired-looking, unshaven man with a puffy yellow sleeping bag over one arm was regarding them all. He looked unimpressed. It took a moment for everyone to register what the man had said, since his appearance was so strange. As soon as one of them moved, they all scrambled into their seats and sat up straight. Well, everyone besides Karchan, who sat in a slouched posture, looking annoyed. It took 9.5 seconds for you to settle down, the man told them flatly, holding up a stopwatch. Time is a precious resource. It's only rational that you would be in your seats and quiet by the time I arrive. Izuku looked to the man that he assumed was his new teacher. Even after studying him for a moment, the haggard-looking man did not look familiar. He wore a black jumpsuit that looked like it had been slept in, and judging by the sleeping bag, probably had. There was only an oddly long scarf wrapped several times around the man's neck and shoulders that Izuku couldn't figure out. A fashion choice? A tool of some kind? I'm Aizawa Shota, the man told them, tossing his sleeping bag behind the teacher's desk. I'm your homeroom teacher. Pleased to meet you. He did not look pleased to meet them. He looked annoyed to meet them, if anything. Still, the staff and teachers were all supposed to be current and former heroes, so this man had to be hiding something behind the rumpled exterior. Now hurry and change into your gym uniforms and head out to the grounds. He pulled a stack of folded uniforms from under the desk and set it on top. He turned and left the room, leaving everyone to hurriedly find their gym clothes in the stack. Luckily, they were all labelled, and Ida quickly started handing them out as he called students' names. Todoroki Shoto! Izuku turned his head to see the unfriendly boy from the recommendation exam come forward to take his uniform. Izuku knew, from Ida's informative chat, that Todoroki had been forced to take the entrance exam for admittance. He hoped there were no hard feelings. As soon as Midoriya got his uniform, he headed to the changing room and quickly got dressed. Just not quickly enough. Karchan blocked his path as he tried to leave, and boxed him in with one foot on the wall and his hands spitting sparks. What's this about recommendation, nerd? Who the hell would see you and think you deserved a free pass? What do you even know about me, Karchan? Izuku asked, attempting to move past the other boy so he wouldn't keep the rest of the class waiting. Karchan grabbed him by the collar of his tracksuit and pulled him back, and Izuku sighed. It doesn't make any sense, Karchan said. Then you're just gonna have to figure it out yourself, Izuku told him, tugging his collar free. I've tried talking to you for years, and you ignored me or made fun of me all of this time. I'm here to learn how to be a hero, not to explain anything to you. Izuku left and broke into a jog to try to catch up with the others. He was trembling slightly as he tightened the straps of his gloves, partly from nerves and partly from anger. It didn't take long for him to spot the rest of the group and join them, just as a couple of the girls arrived as well. Karchan was the last to arrive, and Izuku noticed that his knuckles looked red as though he had punched something recently. Not his problem. Now that the last of us have deigned to join the group, Aizawa said pointedly, let's get started on the test of your quirks.
Aren't we supposed to go to the entrance ceremony?
The cute girl with pink cheeks asked.
And guidance sessions?
There's no time to waste on that sort of thing if you want to become a hero, their teacher said blandly. UA is known for its freestyle education system. Us teachers basically have free rein to run our classes as we see fit. No one knew what to say about that, so they just stood in a cluster, waiting to hear what would come next. Softball throwing, 50-meter dash, standing long jump, endurance running, grip strength, side-to-side step, upper body strength, and seated toe touch. You've done all of those in standard physical tests in middle school. No quirks allowed, right? They all nodded and shrugged. Japan still persists in calculating the average of those records without taking quirks into account, That's irrational. It didn't escape Izuku that this was the second time his new teacher had referred to rationality. Bakugo, Aizawa said. What's the furthest recorded throw you had from middle school? About 67 meters. Kachan answered easily. Great, Aizawa said, gesturing to Kachan to stand in a small circle in chalk that looked like it was for shot put competition. Now try it with your quirk. You can do whatever, just don't leave that circle. Aizawa tossed him a softball, and Kachan caught it in one hand and stretched his shoulders for a moment in preparation. Give it all you've got, Aizawa advised. Awesome! Kachan drew his arm back and then added an explosion to his throw while yelling, Die! Die? Seriously? Izuku thought as the breeze from the blast tossed his hair around and kicked up dust. They all watched in impressed silence as the ball disappeared from sight. There was a beeping from a device in Aizawa's hand, and he lifted it to show them the screen. 705.2 meters. Wow. A blonde boy with a black lightning-like streak in his hair said excitedly. That's insane. It's important to know our limits so we can push past them. That's the first rational step to determining what kind of heroes you'll be. We'll finally get to use our quirks to prove ourselves. This is going to be awesome, one of the boys said happily. Awesome? Aizawa asked in a low voice that had them all uneasy. You're striving to become heroes in just 3 years and you're acting like it's going to be fun and games? He didn't raise his voice, even a little, but the tone had them all flinching and listening with dread. Right. Whichever one of you scores the lowest averaged across all 8 events will be deemed to be hopeless and will be expelled. Izuku's brow scrunched together at hearing this. Surely the man was joking. The looks on his classmates' faces said they weren't so sure. Kachan didn't look worried, of course, and neither did Todoroki. Izuku felt confident enough in his own aptitude that he didn't think he'd fallen last, but he had no idea what quirks the others besides Yaoyorozu had. They started off easy with the seated toe touch. Aizawa had them go one at a time, testing their flexibility, seeing how far past their toes their fingertips could stretch while their legs were extended in front of them. Some were only able to reach their ankles, while others, like Asui, who had the abilities of a frog, was able to stretch far beyond that. Izuku couldn't reach quite as far as Asui, but it was only a centimetre off of her score.
Damn, you're flexible,
the blonde boy with the lightning stripe in his hair said enviously.
I could barely reach my ankles and it hurt like hell. I'm Kaminari, by the way.
Midoriya, Izuku answered with a smile. I have an advantage. One of my quirks is agility and balance. One of your quirks? He asked curiously. Izuku was saved from having to explain by Aizawa calling them to attention to move on to the next test. There were pull-up bars at the edge of the track around the field, and they each took turns, not only seeing how many pull-ups they could do in 1 minute, but chin-ups as well, testing how long they could hang on with their chin above the bar. The cute girl with the pink cheeks, who Aizawa called forward as Uraraka, used her anti-gravity quirk on herself to give her an advantage, but after the pull-ups, the chin-ups she did only last about 15 seconds before she dropped to the ground, staggering a few feet away and vomited into the grass. Izuku wrinkled his nose, but felt bad. Obviously her quirk did something to make her nauseous after too much use, since she had been bubbly and cheerful just a few minutes ago. Kachan did very well, of course, with amazing upper body strength because of his quirk. There was a guy named Shoji who had multiple appendages that could be turned into extra body parts that did even better, even lasted the entire 60 seconds in the chin-up part. Izuku beat Kachan's score by several pull-ups and also lasted to the end of the chin-up time, thanks to his levitation quirk. Everyone was blown away by Shoji's grip strength. No one even came close to matching him at first. Not even Sato, who ate sugar cubes to enhance his strength just before attempting to beat Shoji. Kachan sneered at Izuku when Izuku didn't quite match his grip strength at first, but then looked soured when green sparks appeared around Izuku. The meter on the grips rose up, coming within a kilogram of Shoji's score. The side-to-side stepping was dominated by a very short kid with purple balls on his head that were apparently super sticky to anything or anyone but himself. He put a couple of each on the ground by popping them off his scalp. New ones replaced them instantly, and Izuku was fascinated. Once the balls were in place, the small boy bounced between them like a ball in a hyperactive pachinko machine. Kaminari twisted his ankle during this exercise and was getting increasingly worried about his overall score. Hagakure, the invisible girl, was equally worried. Many of them were having serious doubts, in fact. The further the test went, the more tension built up for those who weren't performing as well. The softball throw came next, and Izuku fired up one for all again and let loose with the hardest pitch he could manage. He beat Kachan's score by 33 meters, and was just patting himself on the back mentally when there was a shout from behind him. He spun to find Kachan's face contorted with rage, and his body wrapped in Aizawa's scarf? "What's this fabric crap? It's stiff. I can't move." "It's my capture weapon," Aizawa told him, sounding aggravated. Izuku noted that his sensei's hair was floating around his head as he spoke, and his eyes were open wide and gleaming a faint red. "It's made from a carbon fiber and special alloy wire. Now stop trying to use your quirk. I'm getting dry eye over here." Izuku realized then that Kachan's hands were turned up, though his wrists were now bound, but no threatening sparks were escaping. Aizawa-sensei appeared to have a quirk-cancelling quirk. Kachan must have relaxed at that point because the capture weapon was released and returned back to its owner to rest on his shoulders once more. Izuku had lots of questions about that, but it was the wrong time to ask them. "Use of a quirk against another student outside of battle practice is strictly prohibited and possible grounds for expulsion, Bakugo." Aizawa's eyes were serious, even though his quirk was deactivated. Kachan made an ugly face, but turned away from Izuku and stomped to the outside of the group gathered, waiting for everyone to finish the softball throw. His tantrum was soon forgotten when Uraraka got a score of infinity after her throw, and everyone lost their collective minds in excitement. Yaoyorozu scored even higher than Izuku, having produced a modified rocket launcher from her back, and fired the softball out of sight. The 50-meter dash was easily won by Ida, who had engines in his calves that propelled him forward at incredible speeds. Izuku placed 4th overall in that particular portion of the test, when One for All stalled out on him for the final few meters. It was still a decent score and nothing for him to worry about. Mineta, the boy with the balls on his head, came in last for that trial, but having the shortest legs of anyone there made that kind of inevitable. The standing long jump was where there was some seriously tough competition. Arsui, with the abilities of a frog, was obviously at the top of that scoring table. Izuku fared well, using his levitation, along with his gymnastics training, to come in 3rd, behind Kachan. The endurance run was relatively easy for Izuku. They just had to keep an even pace and run for up to 30 minutes without stopping or slowing down considerably. Since he normally did running as a daily exercise, it was no big deal. Most of the others seemed to follow a similar fitness observance, since everyone seemed to be fine for the full 30 minutes. Mineta was slowest, followed by Jiro and Kaminari, whose quirk was electricity. Izuku was relatively certain that those 3 were the ones who should be the most worried if Aizawa meant what he had said about one of them being expelled. "Sensei?" Izuku asked Aizawa quietly as the class waited for the last of his classmates to finish their run. You're not really planning to expel any of us today, are you? Why would you think I wasn't serious? His teacher asked him, not taking his eyes off of the final runners. Because you talked to us about the importance of rationality 3 times today, and expelling any student solely based on a handful of physical fitness tests seems to be very irrational, Izuku said respectfully. How so? Aizawa asked. Izuku was encouraged by the fact the man didn't sound angry with his question or answer so far.
Crime is on the rise since All for One was taken down, and All Might isn't going to be on the scene forever. Japan is going to really need good heroes once he retires, to keep things from getting out of hand. Besides, aren't there a lot of kids out there that have quirks that are great for hero work, but not really physical? Rejecting candidates that might make good heroes without giving them a real chance seems, counterproductive? He tried to word it in a way that didn't quite call his teacher's judgment into question while totally calling his teacher's judgment into question. How does a 15-year-old kid know anything about All for One? Aizawa asked, finally pressing the button on his stopwatch and making eye contact with Izuku as Mineta passed the finish line. I kind of met him a few times when I was a kid, apparently.
Oh yeah, he said as if remembering. I read your file. Then, without further comment on Izuku's analysis, he called the group together to give them their test results. He held up a device that projected a hologram of a scoreboard in the air in front of them all. I'm not last, Kaminari gasped out in a whisper.
Oh no!
Mineta moaned as he saw his name in last. Izuku saw with satisfaction that his own name was in 2nd place, above Kachan's 5th. I lied, Aizawa told them all. No one is being expelled. It was a rational deception to make sure you all did your best. 2/3 of the class's jaws dropped, and a few looked like they might faint.
It was quite obvious it couldn't be true, if you just stopped to think about it,
Yaoyorozu said, sounding bewildered by everyone's relief.
I guess I should have said something.
You think? Several of them shouted at her. Mineta looked like he might faint. Anyway, we're finished here for now. All of the handouts and copies of the curriculum are back in the classroom. Look them over. Midoriya, here's a pass to go see the nurse about your arm. Izuku stopped and winced. He'd been hoping his teacher hadn't seen the bruising that had blossomed up his arm after his softball throw. He took the note with chagrin, but the man simply turned and walked away after handing over. No questions, no scolding. Whoa, dude, what happened to your arm? Kirishima asked after taking a look once the teacher had drawn attention to it. It's no big deal, Izuku said with a shrug. I just get some backlash sometimes if I go all out with my strength quirk. I'll see you guys later. I'm gonna go get this looked at first. Izuku was happy to have an excuse not to get stuck in the locker room with Kachan again.
Wait, I wanted to talk to him. He was acting like he had more than one quirk,
Izuku heard Kaminari say as he walked back to the school. Really? Like Todoroki? Kirishima asked. No, Kachan answered. Deku has like 10 or 11 quirks. He gets them from dead people. What? Both boys asked at the same time. Izuku didn't turn back to see what they thought, or what kind of nonsense Kachan would try to feed them. He just kept walking, hoping that everyone would see through Kachan's malicious gossiping to the person he really was. Thank you so much for watching this video. I appreciate all the support you've given me. I love the fact that in this reality, Izuku was able to beat Bakugo in the Quirk apprehension test. It was refreshing, but it was kind of strange to think of Todoroki having to take the normal entrance exam rather than getting it on recommendation. I hope you have all had a wonderful week. Tomorrow is the summer solstice, so I hope that you all have a wonderful solstice if you celebrate. All credits go to the original creator of this fanfiction. A is for Amy71 on AO3. I would highly appreciate it if you gave this video a like and you subscribe to the channel and you hit the notification bell to be notified of when I next upload. There is no pressure to do so though. Thank you for visiting my cozy corner of the internet. Keep growing my sunflowers. Mwah!